Welcome to Cybersecurity Savvy, the show that demystifies cybersecurity for not-for-profit boards and leaders. Hello, I'm your host, Michala Liavaag, and today we're going to talk with Sarah Harriott about their journey to becoming a cyber-savvy leader in corporate governance. We'll discuss the ins and outs of corporate governance, information governance, and cybersecurity in local government. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Michala. Thank you for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation as we sort of look at your journey as a career in corporate governance and the relationship between that and the cybersecurity. Sarah is a solicitor of 11 years qualification with a background in litigation, and she now specialises in both information governance and corporate governance at Coventry City Council. She's going to share with us her journey to becoming a cyber-savvy leader in corporate governance. Sarah, for those in our audience who haven't met you before, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hi, nice to meet you, Michala. Nice to see you again. As the intro said, I'm a corporate governance solicitor with 11 years qualification and experience. I've been at Coventry City Council for just over 5 years now, and during that time I've started to specialise in information governance and corporate governance, and really just enjoying getting to know how the local authority works and getting more into the corporate governance side of things.
Obviously, you've been in the game for a while in terms of the legal side. Did you always sort of want to go into law? Do you want to tell us a bit about your journey there?
I've always been very studious, got good grades at school, but I didn't really know what to do with that. And at first, I think I had aspirations to be a doctor. But then I think it was when I was making my choices, university-wise, that's when I settled on law and I decided to do my LLB. I did the legal practice course, as it was known then afterwards, really got into the practical side of being a solicitor, decided I wanted to do that, and then pursued it from there, found a training contract at a small firm. A bit later on, started working in local government at another local authority, and 5 years I've been at Coventry City Council now. Really enjoyed it, yeah.
I'm conscious that in my field of cybersecurity, and here as a Black woman, I'm perhaps one of the minority. Do you sort of have any experience of that yourself with law at all? Or
it hit me more when I was doing my applications at university, or it was brought to my attention, shall I say, that it was more challenging for women of colour, Black women, to get into the industry, full stop. I think when you're making that choice between whether you're going to go down the barrister solicitor path, I was made aware that as a barrister, you will be self-employed. There's not many people in the profession. It's going to be hard. And I did influence my decision at the time, but I think in retrospect, I have made the right decision. And I think it's most recently during COVID lockdown, that period of reflection, that I've had a chance to really think about that. The Law Society did, it's called the Race for Inclusion, published a report in December 2020, and that's when it hit me, the lack of diversity in the profession. And I was sort of at a loss because it was not long after the pandemic had started, the movement in America regarding George Floyd, everything had happened when the figures came out of that paper. So at the moment, 17% of people in the profession identify as people of colour, and of those, about 2 or 3% identify as Black. So I think it really hit me then. There's something here. I felt so helpless. What can I do? Because that was quite an emotional webinar. There were people sharing their stories. There's the lack of uplift in the profession. Maybe once you hit a certain place in your career, you don't reach partner level. There's a lack of diversity at partner level, all those sorts of things. So it was very hard hitting for me, and it's made me reflect a lot on myself and my personal journey. Luckily at Coventry City Council, we are quite diverse. We've got that, because we're quite a diverse city, we've got that diversity within ourselves as a city council. What is happening at Coventry is they're fully aware of it. They've fully got commitment to diversity and inclusion, but it's not seeped through to the top. So similar to the law profession, people at senior level, it's been addressed there, and the organisation have made a commitment to address it within the organisation. As part of that, they've also recently put on a talent programme called Ignite, run by Jenny Garrett, MBE. Fantastic program that myself and 14 others have been on, and it's just been really insightful. Reflecting now, it's amazing. We've just learned the importance of bringing out of work, authenticity, identity, personal branding, things like that, and networking. As people of colour, we tend to shy away from those things. I know I can't speak for everyone, but I know I certainly have. And it's just bringing your full self to work, bringing your full self to the game, and realizing this is a career. You've got to take every opportunity. So I'm just really grateful to have that opportunity, have that time to reflect. And yeah, I've just come out such a more confident person. And I think as a result of that, I also want to uplift others at the council and also in the legal profession, and yeah, help them see that they can be whatever they want to be. Yeah.
Wow, thank you very much for sharing that. The shocking statistic that you gave
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
around just how few Black women there are, and also the fact that you consciously didn't take a career that potentially interested you because of the lack of
Yeah.
opportunity. And I sort of think to myself how many times that replicated throughout the country. You also mentioned in that about the pandemic causing that self-reflection, particularly after George Floyd with Black Lives Matter. I know you've got children, and just wondering, sort of, did that reflection sort of feed in with that as well? Thinking about, and you just mentioned uplifting others. So is that kind of related to that in terms of the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got two girls, a 2-year-old and a nearly 7-year-old. I think at that point where I felt so helpless, it makes you think about them and their future and the sort of things that they're going to hear. During the pandemic, there were a lot of stories on the telly. There was a wave of awareness. Just one of those stories that stood out for me was, in particular, there was a vet, Black female vet, and she was saying, I'm only one of 1.7% in my industry. And that shocked me. In hindsight, I can see now that that is just the reality. And I called my oldest daughter over and I said, look, here's an inspirational woman. She was sharing her story about the racism, sexism she faces on a daily basis as a rural vet. And I said, Corrie, don't let anything hold you back. I left it at that. I think that was sort of August. Then obviously I listened to the report, the Law Society report in December the 9th. I rechecked the date now. It was just the date that my life changed, because I realised I'm in the same position as that vet. I haven't got the figures for females, but of that 2%, it's going to be a certain number of female. My background's Afro-Caribbean. If you break that down, that 2% figure down even further, I'm exactly in the same boat as that vet. So it just really woke me up and made me think, wow, I need to do something here. I need to be, even if it's a small part, just a small part of that change. So when the course was offered to us, I thought, I've got nothing to lose here. I need to think about myself and what I bring to the world and what I bring to Coventry and my work, really. Yeah.
So it's really great to hear that, Coventry are creating a programme for minorities to become leaders. And certainly one of the things that I've found is dealing with imposter syndrome, like all the time, even now, that sort of feeling of being found out, like never good enough. And I know that's something that is common in women in general, particularly in my field, but also as a minority group, we maybe have that kind of added level on top. And one of the reasons actually that I do this cast is because I promised myself that actually I needed to become more visible as a Black woman to show people who want cybersecurity that you can do this. So it really resonates with me about what you're saying there. And then it sounded like you're saying as well that it's really sort of boosted your confidence.
Yeah, I can totally relate to the imposter syndrome that was addressed within the course. It's so hard because you're doing these things daily, but you're always questioning yourself. And it's really important to reflect on the successes as well as the mistakes, but you learn from the mistakes and you're just growing all the time. And the course gave me the ability to see my worth, see what I'm bringing to the table, see my potential, what I can bring to the table. And it was just amazing in that respect. That energy permeated into the home. My oldest daughter, she came to me the other week with an application form, and she was a bit shy about it, but she said, oh, Mummy, I've got an application form to be a peer wellbeing champion at school. And I was just so proud of her. She's just been my cheerleader throughout this journey, even coming here today, giving me tips, told me what to say. And it was really nice being able to help her realize what she's got, what's special about herself. We talked about what's special about her, what she can bring to the role. And I said, even if you don't get it, even doing this application is just a massive step, and showing your teachers what you're made of. And she stated, I want to be a science teacher. I think this role will be great to help me develop that experience in the future. I care about my other pupils in my class, and I want to be able to be a champion cheerleader for them if there's anything wrong, someone that they can turn to, someone that they can trust, and who can signpost them in the right direction if there's anything I can't help with. And I was just so proud of her, and just being able to see those seeds grow in her, I think, has buoyed me even further.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just like thinking, trying not to get emotional myself. That is so lovely to hear. It really is that just that sort of change, and how what organisations maybe sort of don't see as such. They probably know it's significant and they know they need to do it, but I perhaps wonder if organisations don't quite realise just what an impact that can have on, as you say, individuals, families, and then society at large as we move forward. You mentioned there about, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and I also found that period quite triggering, and it sort of surfaced memories that I'd forgotten about, and things around sort of microaggressions. Did you find that same experience for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. It just really caused me to think about my childhood. I actually journaled a lot of the things that I had been holding inside, just as an outlet to deal with them, really. Example, as a child, other children can be quite cruel about appearance, about my hair being different. And I found going into the workplace quite challenging, applying for interviews, even attending interviews. There was a situation where I joined the Afro-Caribbean Society at university, as it was known then, and I'd put this on my CV, not thinking anything of it. But I think one particular interview where I was asked if I had a chip on my shoulder, I just had to check, because you're part of this society. That's what was said to me. It just really, really dragged me down and made me take that element out of my CV. Social media wasn't around at the time, or wasn't as big at the time, I should say, when I was applying for roles. And I think as a result of removing that from my CV, applying to law firms, I would say probably got more interviews as a result. Even in one interview that I went to afterwards, someone said to me, "You can't tell who you are from your name," as if that's a compliment. It's just those sort of things had to deal with, and I think I've buried them essentially, and it's not until now that I've really had time to reflect on them. But speaking to another colleague, manager, she's really supportive. She says, "Sarah, those things that you've been through have ultimately made you stronger and made you the person that you are today." That was just such an important thing for me to hear. I've been through those things, but I'm now at a point where, being my authentic self, I realise I'm valuable, worthy, etc. And it's time to move forward. And there's just, people are just using their platforms now. I can see it on social media. There's just such a change from when I was in my early days entering into the profession. It's just heartwarming that there's just so much more awareness around the topic, whereas I feel like I've had to hold it in, shrink into spaces over the years. It's just so amazing that we can all be who we need to be who we want to be in all sorts of fields now. It's just great. And in terms of my daughters, bringing them up, I can't stop them from hearing things that are going to hurt them in life, but I can give them the tools to just deal with it better than I did, help them call out these things, lean on the allies if they want to. We just didn't have that terminology, and I'm just so grateful that we have it now. We can talk about it now.
I mean, even the fact that we're talking about it now on this podcast is a positive thing, again, because we're being authentic, just who we are. I'm just thinking about the leadership. You talked about there's that low percentage of professionals who are sort of Black, Caribbean, ethnic heritage in law, partner level, and thinking again about our audience here. Boards are typically, again, still quite white. I know that you're also an aspiring trustee. It's quite difficult to sort of, again, go through that process. I'm really pleased to see organisations like the Action for Trustee Racial Diversity, who are sort of creating that safe space for us to have those conversations, and the sorts of things, again, there's microaggressions that you might come across on a board. I think it's really great that, as you say, we're getting the tools, it's opening up the conversation now, but we do still have quite a way to go. And I know that getting on board as charity doing some great work, they have a bursary scheme to help aspiring Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups into becoming trustees, but it is still quite a challenge.
It's just so great the work that's being done. As you say, I'm an aspiring trustee. It's just, I'd heard about trusteeship, volunteering before. Needs to be more women, more diversity in that field. But I suppose the lack of confidence in me, the old Sarah in me just said, well, that's not for me. But never think that something's not for you. That's why I want to put my hat in the ring now. I want, as part of my pledge to be more visible, I am applying for volunteering work in that sort of field, and by doing that, it'll help me to give something back, but I'll also get something back from it in terms of it'll enhance my skills. It'll match nicely with the corporate governance work that I'm doing and help me to perform as the best person in work.
With your corporate governance hat, you have an awful lot of value to offer organisations. All I keep seeing most frequently are posts for either the chair of the board or the sort of finance lead. Very rarely do I see anything for sort of cybersecurity. I think I've seen like one in the past year, but we're both on our journeys and
definitely, yeah.
Anyway, let's just remind ourselves about corporate governance and information governance for a moment, because I know that's what our audience are here to listen to, but I do think it's important that we talk about sort of diversity challenges as well, because again, as professionals, that's something we deal with. In terms of, you mentioned information governance as being one of the areas that sort of done quite a bit in. Well, first of all, for the audience who aren't familiar with information governance, just explain a little bit about, what that is, and then tell us a little bit about your role within it.
Data protection, essentially. Council, we are major processors of data. We deal with a lot of data. The City Council's got social services. There are and adult social services. They're probably the highest risk areas, but obviously we've got other services that we run, council tax, refuse, everything. So we store a lot of data. We process a lot of data. We send a lot of letters to people still. We undertake a lot of projects, do a lot of consultations in the city with involving people's data. So it's about managing that framework. We've got an amazing information governance department, really lucky to have that, because I know not every council's got that. And then if they need any specialist legal advice, they'll come to me, say it's particularly unusual project, might be law enforcement processing involved, might be something slightly unusual to the council. I'm always more than happy to step in and provide legal advice on that. Main questions are usually, what is our role? Are we controller or processor of that data? As in, controller, do we make all the decisions, or processor, are we acting on those instructions? And just ensuring that, are we collecting the minimum, things like that we just have to go through with the service areas, because they've got their specialty. They're all very specialised in their services, but then they'll need the expertise of us just to ensure that they're handling that data properly that they're dealing with.
Yeah, excellent. So again, that's something I think a lot of citizens don't probably realise, the depth and breadth of information that councils have and have to deal with and protect. Thinking from a cybersecurity perspective for a moment, what would you say was your particular aha moment in realising in your career, oh my goodness, cybersecurity is something we really need to be thinking about and dealing with as well?
We've got an amazing ICT department who deal with our cybersecurity there. Just want to let everyone know that. But obviously with my job, we had to work closely with them. I'd always appreciated it and even taken it for granted. But I think it was during the pandemic when a lot of schools started being attacked. That was a bit of an aha moment for me. It just made me realise no one's safe. We've all got to just protect the data that we've got. We've got a DPA for school service as well. So I advise from afar with that, and I try to keep my hand in and understand what's going on with the schools. So it's just informing the schools and impressing upon them the importance of cybersecurity, really.
That's an interesting point around schools, because they don't have the budgets of big companies to do this stuff, a lot might be sharing a data protection officer. What role do you think the governors of the school have to play in this space?
I think it's really important that they are aware, they do the training as well, just keep themselves up to date, because I suppose they are a step away dealing with the strategic aspects of the school, but this is just so important. And breach reports, that they have oversight of them as well. I think they'll be able to keep on top of common breaches at the school, even if they're small. They start to add up and they can show a picture overall of what's going on in the school. And as a lot of them are going to be emails to the wrong places, that's the most common breach we deal with, unauthorized photographs being uploaded. It's really important that they see how that relates to cybersecurity, information being leaked, giving a picture to undesirables who might want to attack the system. The threat is definitely out there.
You would say then it's part of the responsibility for all governors to be thinking about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely aware of it. Yeah.
What do you think about the idea of having one individual who knows a bit more than the others, and sort of particularly specialising and sort of helping call those things out? Because just thinking, it's such a sort of wide and deep area, sort of information governance and cybersecurity, that if it's not kind of the way you're sort of thinking on a regular basis, I'm just thinking that must be quite a challenge for governors.
Definitely a challenge. And I think even if that can't be achieved on the governing board, it should be an agenda, definitely,
Okay.
in terms of looking at those breaches, or even if there's been no breaches, saying that's not necessarily a good thing. Just being able to assess those and have an awareness of it. Yeah, I'm all for having a specialist or someone who takes more of an interest in the governor's board, because a lack of breaches can be a sign that maybe there's underreporting, they're not being reported properly, and just even keeping a check on that. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Okay. And then coming back to local government, and again, I used to work in local government years
Yeah.
ago, and one of the challenges we always faced was around skill level in IT for our elected members, but also, I suppose, that political thing of, I'm an elected councillor, I don't need to use your systems, I'm outside of all that, as it were. At the time, and I don't know if this has changed actually, they used to have to register as data controllers in their own rights with the ICO. Do you want to tell me a bit about your experience of that and how that sort of changed over the years and where it is now?
The GDPR has been really helpful in that respect, because there was a lot of work put into this when the law changed in 2018. And I think for the most part, it is taken really seriously here by the councillors. I can totally understand that attitude that might have happened in the past, but luckily at Coventry City Council, it is taken really seriously. They all do the mandatory training, they're all registered. We oversee that, ensure that they're all registered, and it is taken really seriously. They use our IT equipment to do their work, send their emails. So we've got a good handle on that. Thank you to the councillors for just taking it so seriously. And also, I think because it's part of an annual report at one of the Audit and Procurement Committee, it's constantly on the agenda. It's at the back of their minds. The training takes place every year. They're expected to do it. And obviously there's that changeover in councillors, but we ensure that new councillors who come on is part of the mandatory training, and it's labelled as mandatory training, so it's taken a lot more seriously.
What do you think about the mandatory training, once a year versus ongoing awareness and helping embed it in the way people think? Is that something that, just thinking about some of the instances that you probably need to deal with across the organisation, that if it's not embedded as people thinking and recognising, you just alluded there to underreporting, what do you think as corporate governance you can sort of do around that?
Well, we've got our intranet, we've got our awareness sessions, we've done a lot of one-on-one training. Certainly at the start of GDPR 2018, there was a lot of one-on-one sessions done to try and embed the enhanced values of the GDPR into the organisation. In terms of awareness, ongoing awareness, we have the intranet, we have an open door policy that if there's any breaches, it's just a reportable. Long and short of it, you have to report it. That's been embedded in the organisation, and I think that hard work that was done, I suppose it's nearly 4 years ago now, it's trying to maintain that. Obviously it's a challenge on an ongoing basis, but I think we've done a lot of the groundwork behind that with the new law coming into fruition, and I think we've got a good basis to say, yeah, it is part of the organisation. And just going wider than that, DPIAs, they're encouraged for new projects, so everyone knows where they are on the SharePoint site. Just at the start of a process, you do a DPIA, or at least a screening. If you're not sure, you can take it to our information governance department, and they'll give you a steer on as to whether you need to do a full one, and then help you complete a full one. DPIAs, they're data protection impact assessments, and there was privacy impact assessment in the Data Protection Act 1998, but it's as if it's been enhanced under the UK GDPR. So there's a lot more questions. There's a template document on the ICO that we tweaked for our organisation, but there's a lot of questions in there. And I'd say it's akin to a risk assessment that you do in health and safety, but in terms of the data protection, why are you undertaking this project? What processing are you going to do? What are you hoping to achieve? Is there even another way that you could be doing it without processing so much data, or any data at all? We answer all those sort of questions, look at the outcome, see whether there's anything that could be modified, if there's any high risks, whether they could be lowered, whether the project should go ahead at all. And yeah, they're very much part of our organisation's culture.
As local government, you obviously have statutory footing to process people's information, but some of the projects, especially now, thinking about, the emerging technology, the Internet of Things, and all these wonderful ways of trying to improve services. How do you and your sort of elected members balance the need to innovate with the stuff around the corporate governance? And you mentioned health and safety there, but also like fraud, etc. So it is fundamentally about risk. How do you kind of help balance that and manage that?
I think it's ensuring that we do the due diligence if we're working with an outside organisation, ensure that they're operating at the same level as us in terms of cybersecurity and data protection, and get those assurances before we enter into any sort of data sharing with them, making sure that DPIAs, where we're dealing with another organisation is in a data sharing relationship, that we get a data sharing agreement to underpin the processing and underpin the sharing. It's all covered in writing, and ensuring that there's all that good governance there.
What about organisations that don't have in-house counsel like you do?
Well, there's a lot of advice on the ICO website. I turn to it all the time. It's brilliant for me. It's a challenge, but it's doable. But the important thing is to, if you haven't got it internally and you need the help, just get the help, get it externally. It's worth investing in the long term, especially if you're going to work with council, because we've got reputational issues. We can't be seen to be dealing with another entity that doesn't take data seriously. It's definitely worth investing the time in and being able to bring that assurance to us, because projects over a certain size, they have to go through ICT as well. And they get a separate questionnaire in terms of security and what systems that they're using. So we're very much of the opinion that it is our biggest asset, our people's data. And we've got to look at it from the position that we are working for the city, for the enhancement of the city. Everything we do is for the citizens of Coventry in one way or another, whether it's laid out in statute or whether we've got the powers to do it deriving from statute. That's why we take it so seriously, and why we want to see the seriousness in the organisations that we deal with.
One of the interesting things I saw on LinkedIn yesterday was around charities picking up quite a lot of the work for local government because budgets have been squeezed. And thinking about the sort of due diligence piece that you mentioned, one of the challenges I always found was when you're dealing with like the really big companies who are just like, these are our T's and C's. That's it. And also the other phrase that I got all the time was, no one else has ever asked this before. Everyone else is fine with it. Is that something that you've heard a lot yourself?
I've heard it with the educational technology vendors in schools, actually. We've had the odd, no one's asked us to do this before, when we say, well, under Article 28, if you're acting as a processor, there should be written terms to define the roles and give you our instructions. It could be similar for charities. To not be defensive is probably a good start, and to take it as a learning point, because I've amended those sort of contracts and given it to the edtech vendor, but then they've got something out of me that they didn't have before. They've got a service for free, really. So I think it's that mutual appreciation that if someone's coming along and quoting something out of GDPR off the ICO website, you have to do certain things in respect of data protection. If we as a local authority are asking for that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and then you can take it away, incorporate it into the way you work.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something. When I was working in a charity, I remember one call in particular. I had some people from fundraising in a room with me, and we had a third party provider on the phone, and we were sort of going through some security things. And after the call, one of them said to me, "Thank you, Michala. I have learned so much from listening to you, talking with them about this." And the fact that the third party was taking the thing on board, they said, we're actually sort of lifting up the base for the entire sector who uses that provider, not just helping us. That is actually what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
definitely,
know, with these providers, you're giving them something, that expertise, and they can use that going forward. Where people do have in-house subject matter experts, it's really useful. But I do wonder if with the due diligence, if people don't have that in-house, that can be quite challenging, I think. Do you think that leaders of councils, charities, whatever the organisation, have a role to play around the due diligence piece and holding organisations to account around that?
Yeah, definitely. The attitude comes from the top down, I think, taking it seriously and not seeing it as a blocker to getting a project done, but rather an enhancement to getting your work done. It's just another way of putting it, protecting yourself at this stage, ensuring that it's by design and default, as the GDPR says. It just saves a lot of challenges at a later stage if anything does go wrong, especially if you're handling sensitive data.
It all comes down to risk. Fundamentally, my role is just risk management, just from the lens of cybersecurity and information security. Over the years, then, I've certainly noticed that increase in, sort of cybersecurity risk and information security risk moving up the agenda. Certainly, it's something that from the sort of World Economic Report, you see it's right up there alongside coronavirus right now with the pandemic again, and the increase right now with Russia invading Ukraine as well. We've got that increased heightened cyber threat. Is that something that you've also seen happen in local government?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been an historic feeling maybe that local authorities, we're not a target, we haven't got anything interesting to give, but now there's been a massive turnaround. It's taken really seriously. We have a wealth of information about the city, about its residents, all the services that we do, and that is valuable information, and it's really important to us that we protect it. And I think it's important to the citizens in terms of trust, that they know that we're protecting all the data that we hold, because it is so valuable, definitely.
The things that I'm hearing there are, obviously protect, you've got lots of information, and just to pick up as well on that we're not a target, that's so common. And actually the very first episode of Cybersecurity Savvy was who would hack us. So if you're listening and you've not heard that episode, you might want to go back and have a listen. Often Cited, how many times do you call somewhere and they say, no, we can't do that because data protection? Do you think perhaps organisations are being a bit risk averse when actually so much has changed with technology that we perhaps need to be a bit risk taking? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not good enough just to say data protection prevents us from doing it. What we're on a mission to do is to understand the why. And when we say data protection prevents us, talk about it more in terms of we haven't got a lawful basis to process because, etc., or we can't give you this because of this exemption, that exemption. I think it's just realizing that when you say data protection prevents us, everything is grounded in that act or the GDPR. So it's using the correct terminology. It's not just saying data protection prevents us from doing it. It's saying more, being smarter about it and saying we haven't got a lawful basis to process because, and really getting that grounding and understanding. as to why we can process, disclose, share, or why we can't, rather than just having that blanket GDPR says no approach. And then that's the role of information governance and myself to embed that understanding in the organisation.
That's really good to hear, because I think quite a lot in our field, certainly historically, there's been this perception of security says no. And certainly it's something that as an industry, we're trying to be more pragmatic and looking at, well, how can we enable you to do that in a way that's secure? And so I guess what you're saying is, it's how can we enable you to do that lawfully?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear, that corporate governance, compliance-based and security-based professionals, we are looking to help the organisations we work for. Do you feel like the sort of corporate governance has really shifted recently as well? What does that look like currently going into the future?
I suppose there's been quite a few high-profile challenges at other councils up and down the country, and we're keeping a close eye on that, because although it may not be an issue for us at our front door now, you can't say it's never going to happen to you. Issues around governance, relationships between councillors and officers, and we've always been very involved in that and very aware of that, but is keeping on board with these reports and other issues that are happening around the country, because it's as if there's been a tidal wave recently, and we just want to be very careful with how we operate in Coventry. Just because something is working and it's going well, that doesn't mean we can take our eye off the ball. We still want to encourage that relationship. The way councillors and officers interact, we're still very much embedded in that and invested in that. So that's part of my role, keeping on top of that. Also the day-to-day work with the constitution, authority, delegation, and what I want to do is try and be more of a visible face of that, make it an instrument that everyone can find accessible, or if they need help, they can come to me with that, and help everyone understand that it's part of the way we work. It's an unwieldy document, but it's got all our powers and delegations in there.
The thing you've made me sort of think about with that is how fundamental the practices that contribute to good corporate governance, the organisational culture is really such a part of it. And again, that tone from the top is so important. So one of the things I like to ask is a question around sort of three things. One of them was around your most recommended book and why.
Got to be The 7 Habits of Effective People. That was recommended to me by my sponsor, Andy Williams. Been a massive inspiration to me, helped me strategically. Yeah, it was just really mind-opening. What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? Start with the end in mind. And now I've listened to that book, I can see it in the habits of a lot of leaders that I'm around. Basically, what do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? Really have a think about that, how you present yourself, your brand, your everything. Also, the one about taking a break. Don't just get your head down, be hardworking. Like you've got to get your head up, think about where you're going, what you want from life. Yeah, that's just absolutely resonated with me, definitely.
Yeah, excellent. You also picked a couple of podcasts.
One that I've got into recently because of my connection is Carol Stewart. She was one of the coaches on my course. Amazing woman. The way I interacted with her was in our support and challenge group. So small group work, you bring a challenge that you might be facing in the workplace. But rather than people just give you advice, they give you questions to help you think for yourself as to how you can navigate that challenge. So she was just really effective in leading that and drawing out the best in us and really making us think about the situations. I really struggle with that, reflecting, but it was great to just have that opportunity to reflect. And I thank her so much for enabling me to do that. And yeah, she's got a podcast which goes live every week on LinkedIn. She's got a book.
It's called Quietly Visible. If anyone wants to look that up, I've actually been on that myself as a guest. She's got lots of inspirational women speaking about different challenges, and men for that matter. I also think she does great work.
Yeah. Second podcast I'd say is BBC Sounds in general, but I love all the shows on Radio 4. They've got audio books on there, and just a lot of mini documentaries about things that you never think about. It's just really interesting to think about other things outside your normal day-to-day. And as well as that, there's Law in Action, helps you just keep a fence in the legal field. Just find that really interesting.
Excellent, thank you for that. So what's one question that you wish I'd asked you that I haven't?
Maybe what drives you?
Okay, good
Yeah.
one. What drives you?
What drives me? This is one of the things that I suppose I'd never thought about until recently. I think it's a combination of things. Daughters making a difference. Particularly now, I feel like I've got a lot in me, and I've made that realization. And I think that's just such a motivation just to see where I can go now with it. I'm from Coventry originally. Parents came over from Jamaica in the 60s. They've never left the city. They're very much grounded in the city, and so am I. It's just that thought of being able to give something back, and for the next generation. Yeah, really excited to see what the future holds in terms of that.
Great question, thank you. I'll be adding that one to future episodes. What would be your advice for that board member, for that executive, in terms of thinking about the risks around information?
Don't fear it. If you don't know something, don't be afraid to ask. No question is a stupid question, I think, especially if you're in a role of leadership, to help embed it in the organisation, to encourage people to ask questions if you don't know something, because things are changing all the time in technology. Just be aware of the threats, like even your podcast, relating it to the Ukraine. Just, you never know what's going to happen in the world. Obviously, the pandemic's happened now. The scope's always just changing, and just to be aware of that is just so important, I'd say, to someone at board level, even if it's not your day-to-day, helping to promote it and not seeing it as a hindrance, but seeing it as something that enhances your organisation is just so important, I think.
That's a great message to leave listeners with. Thank you so much. So where can they find you online if they'd like to follow up with you at all?
I'm on LinkedIn. Mostly that is my social media go-to. So yeah, if you search for my name, I am there. Yeah.
Excellent. We'll put it in the show notes. Great. Well, that's lovely. Thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed speaking with you, Sarah.
Thank you for having me so much, Michala.